Hello folks, Neil here from I Will Always Love Video Games. Halloween, one of my favorite times of the year, and it's been one of my favorite times of the year ever since I was a kid. Even to this day, I like dressing up in multiple costumes to celebrate the holiday. I didn't do it as a kid to make more candy by going to each house multiple times. I did it just because I loved it. I love the spooky imagery. I love all the haunting images, the creepy sound effects and spooky music, and I still love it to this day. So, when it came time for me to make my first top 5 list for IWALVG, I decided it should be my top 5 favorite games to play on Halloween. However, my list may not be as predictable as you might think. There are so many horror, terror, gore titles released throughout the year. Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Left 4 Dead, Dead Space. You could pretty much take any of those games and put them on a must-play on Halloween list. My list will feature none of those games. My list is compiled of 5 games that offer a lot of charm, fun, and challenge, along with the spooky imagery and terrifying ambiance that we associate with the holiday. So, without further ado, here are my top 5 games to play on Halloween. Turn off all your lights, make sure you have nothing else on. Plug your headphones into your PC, put them on, and load up Home. Home is an indie game by Benjamin Rivers, available on Steam for $3, that delivers scares not by shoving bloodthirsty monsters into your face, but by giving players an uneasy feeling of suspense and dread and a fear of the unknown. There are other games somewhat in the vein of Home available for PC, such as Anna or Limbo, in the sense that they're adventure games with minimal to no music and spooky visuals, but they rely on some horror elements, and as I've stated, this list is trying to avoid traditional horror titles. Home is a unique experience that relies on its story and atmosphere to give you the shivers. I don't want to give everything away, but I'll give you the gist of it. In Home, you're unconscious, and you're awakened by an oncoming storm. You're all alone, in the dark, in a house that you don't recognize. Armed only with a lantern, your goal is to not only find your way out of the house, but also find out why you're there and what exactly happened before you were awakened. The game is basically a choose-your-own-adventure type story and is supposed to be completed in one sitting. However, the game's length is only around 2 hours or so if you get sucked in by the story, you won't be complaining too much. The replayability in Home is great too, since every choice you make during gameplay affects the progression of the story, as well as its outcome. There are several different ways the story can go, and even when it ends, it's still open enough to be left up to your own interpretations as to what happened that fateful night. The reason Home is a good Halloween game is because it's what you don't see that scares you. Your field of vision is limited to whatever is right around your lantern, and the only sounds you'll hear are from things usually outside your line of sight. In a way, it's a haunted house game. It feels exactly like what being alone in a strange house in the dark should feel like. Your imagination and fear take over, interpreting every shadow to be a ghost and every creak to be the footstep of a psycho killer. It's simply a great game with a spooky atmosphere and deserves to be experienced on the spookiest of holidays. If you think a game about wandering around in the dark is too scary for you, then maybe you'd like something more colorful and lighter in tone. Spirits and Spells, also known as Castlevania, is an action platformer that was released on both the GameCube and the Game Boy Advance. I've played both games, and both games have their strengths and flaws, but I'm going to focus on the GameCube version for the most part. I never owned a GameCube during its lifespan, but throughout the years I kept hearing about a game called Spirits and Spells. It seemed to be a game that people either really loved or really hated. There never seemed to be an in-between feeling for this game. So once I finally got my hands on a GameCube, I was finally able to play it a few years ago. And you know what? It's not that bad. The story is this: Alicia, Greg, and some of their friends are off trick-or-treating on Halloween night when their friends are turned to stone by the boogeyman. Now it's up to Alicia, dressed as a witch, and Greg, dressed as a devil, to traverse cemeteries, dungeons, haunted houses, and forests, and other chilling locations to find a way to save their frozen buddies. You can switch between Alicia and Greg throughout the game, and it's necessary to overcome certain obstacles. The game isn't a masterpiece by any means, but I still find it to be an enjoyable romp that fits the theme of Halloween quite well. It has some flaws such as camera angles that obstruct your view, frustrating jumps, and a few difficulty spikes, but it's still playable. After watching a really scary movie or playing a gory game, Spirits and Spells is a great game to pop in and just play around with for an hour or so, to retain the feel of Halloween, but also to cheer you up and lighten the mood. It's an obscure little gem that's worth checking out. So now we've covered sinister tones, feelings of fear and tension, colorful worlds, and solid gameplay. Put all of those together, add a shitload of challenge, you've got number 3 on my list. Of course, there are dozens of titles in the Castlevania series to choose from, but I always seem to go back to the one that started it all. Everyone knows the story. You're Simon Belmont, and you're on your way to rid the world of that diabolical vampire Dracula. It has everything a good Halloween game needs: thrills, chills, and all the creepy monsters we associate with the holiday. Skeletons, ghosts, ghouls, swamp monsters, mummies, bats, and of course, Dracula. It's hard as hell, but it's still an incredible game, and if you haven't played it, you're missing out. Everything that can be said about this game has pretty much already been said by countless video game players and reviewers. It's simply a gothic classic that paved the way for other games of its type and style. As much as I love later titles in the series, such as Super Castlevania 4, the original still holds a special place in my heart, and therefore gets a place on this list. Okay, I'm gonna cheat a little bit here, and I'm gonna put 2 games in one slot. Mainly because they're both incredible games, and they should both be played. And they actually work together in a way. Not only that, but they're scary as hell, which is quite a feat to accomplish on a platform as basic as the Commodore 64. These games scared the piss out of me as a child. I remember sitting in my bedroom with all the lights off, playing these games in the dark with the volume turned all the way up. What a stupid, stupid move that was. I've concluded that any trauma I had as a child came directly from these games. Even as a kid, I could sit through horror movies or listen to scary soundtracks and be perfectly fine. Fire up Forbidden Forest, however, and suddenly I'm in a fetal position under my bedsheets. In Forbidden Forest, and its sequel Beyond the Forbidden Forest, you're all alone in those woods with nothing but a bow and arrows. Your goal? Survive the night and then tackle a giant otherworldly demon, the Demogorgon, in a tense climactic battle. At all times, there's a never-ending sense of tension and fear. You never know what the next creature you'll encounter is. You never know where they'll come from, or worse, what they'll do if they get a hold of you. There's no chance to sit still and plan your next move. You've got to keep sprinting through the forest, trying to keep your wits about you as every unholy creature imaginable attempts to slaughter you in a number of grisly ways. And those death animations, even by Commodore 64 standards, are incredibly brutal to watch even to this day. Paul Norman's musical score is the stuff of nightmares. Not because the songs are bad, far from it. They're just haunting. 25 years later, and the music and sound effects from these games are imprinted in my memory as permanently as the Super Mario Bros. Theme. Seriously, the music is that good and that memorable. The controls for both games have a learning curve, and even after you've mastered them, you're still left all alone to use your newfound skills in a tense, frantic environment where any mistake means your untimely demise. The Forbidden Forest games for Commodore 64 are scary, intense, and challenging, and even with the computer's graphical and musical limitations, they still manage to deliver a bone-chilling experience that, once you play, you'll never forget. Hello, I'm the Remembrance Reviewer. I recall it, so you aren't required to. For many, many years, the Commodore 64 games Forbidden Forest and Beyond the Forbidden Forest were my go-to games to play on Halloween. Even after I lost my Commodore 64 and my Commodore 128D, I still managed to find ways to play these games through the magic of emulation. However, In the year 2010, a game came out on Xbox Live Arcade that quickly gained the top spot on my list of games to play during this spooky season. Costume Quest is the absolute pinnacle of what a Halloween game should be. It's got everything a kid associates with the holiday. Parading around in costumes, trick-or-treating, enjoying the haunting imagery. It's got it all. Not only that, but Costume Quest can be enjoyed by Halloween lovers of almost any age. It's spooky but not gory. It's colorful but not syrupy. It hits the look and feel of the holiday right on the nose, and it's carried throughout the entire game. In Costume Quest, you play as either Ren or Reynold, a brother and sister who are about to go trick-or-treating. Depending on who you play as, the other sibling gets kidnapped by monsters known as Grubbins, who mistake the child for a giant piece of candy corn. Your quest is to gather friends, create and customize costumes, collect candy, complete side missions, and ultimately rescue your sibling from the clutches of the Grubbins and the evil witch Dorsilla. The look of this game is adorable and ghoulish at the same time, and it captures the look of Halloween so well that you can appreciate it as a child or as an adult. It blends the styles of Art Clokey, Tim Burton, and a Pixar film, which isn't a surprise since the game's development was led by Tasha Harris, a former Pixar artist. The dialogue will have you laughing out loud, and the story itself is a charming take on the simple rescue the person from the monsters trope. The core gameplay is simple, but fun and never frustrating. You talk to other kids, bash open pumpkins and other objects to get candy, bob for apples, trick-or-treat door to door, enter a costume contest, and other enjoyable Halloween activities. Trick-or-treating is especially fun because you'll never know until the door opens whether you're about to get a bag full of candy or get pounced on by a monster. You'll be on the edge of your seat every time you knock on a door. There are two basic types of gameplay to Costume Quest: a light RPG-style world to traverse and explore, and turn-based third-person battle sections against the Grubbins and other baddies. During these battle scenes, the costumes you and your friends are wearing alter the ways you attack and what types of attack you use. There are many different costumes to collect and create, and you can swap your completed outfits with your fellow adventurers. This game captures exactly what it feels like for a child when they're out and about on Halloween night in their costumes. When you were a kid and you were in costume, you were whoever that costume was supposed to be. If you were dressed up as Batman, you felt like you were Batman, and you more than likely acted like him when you went door to door. The same goes for this game. When you get into a fight with a Grubbin, the game shifts from its regular tone to this amazing imaginary fight where the game's protagonists appear as they think they already look in the real world. What's actually happening is a bunch of kids wailing away at a puny green goblin, but in their minds, on this night, there's superheroes, knights, and robots blasting and slashing their way through giant monsters that tower over the town. I'm not a big fan of RPGs, and I'm not a fan of turn-based combat, and yet I still enjoy the ever-loving hell out of Costume Quest. It's so quirky, so interesting, and so fun that I don't mind the grinding or the tiny flaws the game may appear to have to others. It's the spirit of Halloween encapsulated into a video game, and it's one I'll continue to play every October for years to come. Well, there you have it. My top 5 favorite games to play on Halloween. Check them out. I don't think you'll be disappointed. And if you have a favorite game that I didn't cover that you like to play on Halloween, share it in the comments below. Have a scary but safe Halloween, and I'll see you next time here on I Will Always Love Video Games. I'm a Time Lord. I walk in eternity. Jelly baby?